And you have stumbled upon Vertical Pursuit, the podcast. Perhaps you didn't stumble upon it. We'd like to think you searched it out. But if you're like me and you're searching around podcasts, it's fairly likely you would stumble upon the Vertical Pursuit podcast. Mike Barrett, Mike Tatlock, thanks for joining us. We are on iTunes and Spotify and the app, the Vertical Pursuit app, which has more than just the podcast on it. It kind of walks you through the whole program, and there's also a book that goes with that, which is also accessible from the app. And then, of course, we're also on the website as well if you want to look for more. And we're also a what's the term, Colton? Video cast? Vidcast. Colton Myers in the back, newly settled into his marriage. But anyway, welcome in. We always try to grab topics, a lot of times suggested topics. Yeah. Which is becoming more and more of a thing when somebody will grab me and say they listen to the podcast. And why don't you guys talk about this? This has been bothering me. And so some of it comes from that, and some of it, honestly. And I remember back when I was a sports broadcaster, back when I was in radio, way back in the day, when I'd be watching a game, I would be kind of in my head logging tape and saying, well, that'll be a good thing for tomorrow. I better record that, or I'll hear a sound bite, and I'll go, well, that would be great on tomorrow's show. Or people would like to hear that. Well, I kind of started doing that again with this. Yeah. To where I'll hear something or I'll see something, and then I think, well, it's going to be a good VP topic. So the other day, to dive into today's or this episode's topic, I was on, looking at social media on Sunday night or Monday after the NFL weekend. And which, by the way, getting into a busy season for you with the NBA season starting because you are the NBA team chaplain for the Portland Trailblazers, which if you've listened to any other episodes, you've probably heard the story on that and how much good he's doing with that. But I was watching an NFL recap, and on a couple of different sites, they always throw fan stuff in there. And one of them always has, like, the fan fight of the week. Because there's always a fight. In the stands, in the men's room, on the concourse, this dude's just throwing down. And so I watched the other day, and these guys, I don't even know what happened. One bumped another, and they had the opposite jersey on. Next thing you know, of course, they're drunk, and they're throwing hands. And then the one guy, they threw a couple punches, and then the one guy kind of looks at the other guy with this look on his face, and he dropped his hands, and then they hug.
What?
I mean, it was just like, and I think the caption was something about a stalemate. It might even have been in the men's room, this fight. It was in Philly or somewhere, where people just don't mess around. And so I watched the guy kind of look at and all it took was he changed the look on his face from anger, which we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode, to kind of just this, what are we doing?
Yeah.
He just kind of had a look like that. And then he almost kind of dropped his head a little bit. And so it started me thinking about, and I'll have a story to go along with this, a Bible story to go along with this, which I think illustrates it really well. But in your life, do you ever have those times when, and maybe it's even like in traffic, where you get mad and there's road rage, and then somebody, instead of flipping somebody off, you wave or you do something that you can kind of make the other person you can defuse the situation just based on your posture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The posture you take. And even in a situation where it's cars and there really is no way to hear the other person, body language.
Yeah.
And as it relates to guys, which a lot of the topics on this show are specific to men, but as we always say, we
have women all the time now.
Yeah.
We listen.
We've come to find out that a lot of women are loving this for what it's maybe doing or the fact that it's giving their husband some tools, so they like it. But it's interesting, this whole topic, and I started thinking about it from almost like a psychological perspective on what you're seeing in somebody else, from expression to eyes to smile, how a situation can be completely defused just based on your body language.
Right.
And I saw that in that silly NFL fight, and I thought, man, and I've had guys tell me that, stories about getting in a mix or getting in a scrape, and then watch how quickly it can be diffused. And of course you got to park some pride, and which always seems to happen. Maybe this other guy was realizing this guy's going to kick my butt.
Right.
Maybe it was something as simple as that. I'd like to think it was more maybe coming to senses, but I think it's a very interesting concept.
Well, we were last night. You and I were driving home from an event. We were in the truck, and you were getting ready to drop me off, and you're like, "Hey, here's an idea." And I love this because this is how it happens all the time. We'll be driving somewhere, hanging out, and you're like, "That's a podcast episode," and we're like, "Yep, it is." And last night, it really resonated when you said it. You're like, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about us talking tomorrow on the podcast about posture, and specifically?" When you get into a moment and everything inside of you wants to rage out or control something, I mean, all those things, and the power of posture. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, when you said that last night, I thought, we've got to talk about that. And of course, you mentioned the Bible story, which is going to be awesome. We'll get to that in a second. But I think every guy and woman that's listening right now has been in one of those situations or has witnessed it. But when you just said, here's two guys just getting ready to go, and it sounds like they were already in it, and all of a sudden something stops. You're like, what was that? What happened? And it changed the atmosphere of the whole place. And posture does that. Posture can change the atmosphere. We talk about this a lot with law enforcement. You and I are both good friends with a lot of law enforcement guys. Our church, we have a lot of great law enforcement men and women, and we have a security team. And one of the things they're trained to do is de-escalate things. And posture can do that, and I think posture applies to every situation, whether you're getting your gas pumped and you're stressed out because, they're backed up and you got to get to a meeting or pick up the kids at school. And we all feel it in those moments. And it's amazing how we go over the edge so fast. And I know for me, like that's something that I have to look at in my own life. What kind of posture when I walk into a room?
I was going to ask you that. Being a pastor and before you give a sermon, how much of that comes into your mind in terms of how you approach something? Or if you get a little fired up and you're going to do something that's maybe borderline controversial or it's going to maybe ruffle some feathers, is that something you consciously think about?
All the time. We talk about this all the time. And Colton knows this, being on staff, that we talk about posture a lot. Posture is everything. I mean, you can actually say something truthful, right, direct, clear, whatever, and your posture can take it in two different directions. The posture can take something and take it where it shouldn't go, and your posture can make it exactly where it needs to be. So I think posture is actually as important, if not even more important, than what you say.
It tends to for lack of a better term, and I was kind of trying to think of another way to say this, but you can kind of control someone else or an atmosphere based on your posture.
Okay, this is funny you say this. So we had this conversation with just on our staff the other day where you can actually say nothing and say everything.
True.
All your posture, your posture is screaming. It's yelling. It's sending messages left and right. And some of us, here's the thing about posture is some of us are very self-aware people, and we know that. And we like, okay, my posture is sending a message right now. Some people are completely unaware. And it's like, dude, we say something. Now, here's something we say at our staff too. And I picked this up from another leader, so it's not mine. But man, here's the question. Do you know what it's like to be on the other side of you?
Yeah.
Think about that.
No. I mean, yes, because I overthink. And I'd like to think I have a massive overabundance of self-awareness, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But I try to always think about that. And then I actually envy sometimes people who don't have any, because I go, they don't have any stress. They just aren't worried about anything.
Right.
It's kind of they're America's guest, and they just don't have any. And whereas I'm overthinking everything that comes out of my mouth to my own. I mean, and then you think about what I used to do for a living.
Oh yeah.
And the stress that would come with that because I was a TV broadcaster, and so. But I also think that tended to help me because I was able to try at least, and you're the same way. Try and whatever I'm saying, speak to an 11-year-old kid and a 92-year-old woman, and have it kind of makes sense to both of them. I think that takes a lot of self-awareness.
It does. Well, because I think a lot of people are so focused on what they need to say versus putting themselves in the shoes of the person they're speaking to. And when you think about the other person, you think about what posture do I need to be in that's going to help them as we communicate. The other thing we talked about last night is, and people in leadership stuff talk about this, the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, and that gets used a lot. But it's so true. There are some people who are, they're the thermometer. They're the ones that they walk into a room, and if the room is like a thermometer, the room reads the temperature, and if somebody goes into a stressful situation, they stress out. But a thermostat controls the temperature. It's a person that can walk, and your posture can really determine what the experiment and the climate and what other people are getting out of the environment that you walk into.
It's funny you say how you can say a lot without saying anything. I would even say how you can almost seem smarter than you are without. So after I was, any of you listen to past episodes, you know a little bit of my story or our stories, but when I was zipped out of the NBA, I've tried a lot of different stuff. And so now my life is basically a whole bunch of different projects and businesses and stuff that sometimes is successful, but really it's just a scramble. There's a lot of freedom in that. There's a lot of uncertainty in that. But my point is, when I was trying like financial stuff, which I am not, that was not my place. But I remember I was in a couple meetings and with the Major League Baseball project, which I'm still involved with. We've had some big time meetings like with, city council or land use attorneys. And I sit and kind of, always a pen in my hand because I figure it makes me look smart and a little nod here and there and arms folded, but I don't say much. And I'm not understanding more than half. I'm not understanding some of this language. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a land use, whatever. And one time somebody said to me, "Thank you for backing me up on that point I made and concurring with what I said." I said, "Oh yeah, no problem." And then I asked him again. I said, "Well, what did you say again? Because I don't remember what you said." And then they explained it and they said, "Well, you seemed like you had that whole side of the table, like you were running that thing." And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But the safest thing for me then was to sit there and nod and now and then go, "Oh, I concur with what Jim said," when I don't even know what's going on. The point is, now that's a bad example because
it's not a bad, actually. There's some wisdom in that.
Well, in a fish out of water type story, there is. But I've left there going, man, the less I say, the smarter they all think I am.
Absolutely.
So I just kind of...
It's funny, though, because there's the verse in the Bible that says to be slow to speak and quick to listen. And I think that's a posture thing where everybody wants to, people do this, especially guys. And I know women do it too. You go in and you size everybody up in a room, and you guys come in there and everybody's got in fact, the other day I was reading some men's article on men's leadership and it was garbage, but it was on something that everybody was like, "This is great," and it was all about how to control a conversation. Like, where to sit at the table.
Was it like business leadership?
Oh, yeah. It was business leadership. It was total garbage. Like, it was like, if you want to be a controlling, manipulative person, it was great advice. But if you actually want to be someone that somebody wants to work with, I'd chuck that whole article. But it was all about basically like, it even said like, hey, if you're talking and then somebody else starts talking, make sure that you keep talking louder over them to establish your dominance. And I'm like, this is garbage advice. But a lot of people, that's what they do.
And there's people who believe also... Like, I went into a conference room one time. I think this was part of the MLB thing, but it's a big conference table. The guy I'm with, like, raises the chair up really high. So he's, like, way taller than anybody else. And I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "This is a power move, man." And I go, "Power move? You're as dumb as I am." And he said, "No." He said, "By being a foot taller than everybody around me," he goes, "it's a psychological thing where I will seem like I know more, maybe a little more superior." And I'm like... These games that some of this, but that's a posture thing. Well, once again, and by the end of the meeting, I'm realizing it's working. They're paying attention to him because his chair is up higher than mine.
Well, it makes me, I laugh because I'm saying it's how much overcompensation is a posture thing.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're overcompensating for something, whatever it might be. I'm not going to go down that road right now.
We've seen our trucks.
But I know, that's why I didn't want to go too far.
Everybody says
mine's a factory lift, so it came that way.
No, it's not. We both need a ladder to get in our trucks, lights all over and everything. Speaking of overcompensating. All right, let me get to this. Let me get to this story because it's now with everywhere we've gone, which this is kind of how this thing usually goes. We're going to circle back and it's going to all tie in together, and you're going to know that as we start to. And now I'm not the pastor, so I'm going to take some liberties in this story, but this is a story out of 1 Samuel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So David, the same David who killed Goliath, David is with his boys, and they're tending for land and sheep and they happen to be working around this guy, kind of a bad rich dude named Nabal.
Yeah.
Now Nabal was married to Abigail, and Nabal is kind of a loud, brash, probably a lot of slaves for that part of that time in the Bible. And so David, it's coming to harvest time, festival time, and I think there was an abundance that Nabal had. And again, I'm filling in the blank, so correct me.
No, this is good. This is great. You got it. You got it.
You know more than I do. So
such a good story.
It is a great story, and one that you really have to. And this is a lot of things in the Bible because when I was a kid, I didn't go to the colleges you went to. I didn't know all this stuff out of nature. But as I've started to, or by schooling, as you dive into some of these stories and you're ripping past them, especially Old Testament stuff. When you're encouraged to stop and look at these things, you go, my gosh, and you take these sentences apart and realize what they mean. This is one of those stories, and I'll get to why. Well, David and his crew, kind of a badass crew.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
they definitely are.
So he sends a couple of his guys to go to Nabal and say, hey, just so you know, while we were tending to your stuff out here and it really weren't even hired to do that, you didn't lose any sheep.
Right.
We crushed it for you. We didn't steal anything. So how about sharing a little something with us? Sending a little something back for us, because I think you kind of owe us that. So Nabal, basically, when his people go to him, says, who are these guys talking to me like I'm going to owe somebody something? So his guys go back to David, and they repeat the conversation just as Nabal said it. David gets pissed, and he tells his guys,
get your swords.
Get your swords, man. We're going.
Yep.
And so even Nabal's people, they don't like Nabal. They know this guy.
Yeah.
So they go to Abigail, who is described as beautiful and smart in the Bible. And I don't think she's crazy about Nabal, but she's probably trapped in this tough marriage.
Oh, totally. This is all the makings of like an action Hallmark together.
Well, especially the way I'm telling it, because I'm not doing it like I probably should.
That's exactly how the story goes.
So these guys go to Abigail and they say, we know your husband's a jerk, but we don't need a senseless battle here. We know that David and these guys are tough. They're going to come up here. It's going to be this huge fight. What can you do? So she basically gets all of these provisions, food, wine, gifts, and puts them on donkeys and heads down to find David and his crew. So here's where posture comes into the story. And I when I first was, the story was first told to me, it wasn't really even about posture. It was more, but anyway, I turned it into that, so maybe I took some liberties there too. She goes down this windy trail into this ravine, finds David and his crew. She gets off her donkey and bows to David and starts calling him, says, your servant is here. And so she took matters into her own hands. After a few minutes, she senses the change in David's emotional state of being ready for war and for battle, to then him saying, gosh, you're right. And she says things to him like, what story do you want to tell out of this?
Yep.
That you just went and caused another battle because your pride was hurt? And I think it was one of the best examples of a time where she convinced him to refuse to respond in like kind.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was a sense where, and I know there's a whole bunch of different branches off the story, but it was a time when he could return good for evil, which again is what the essence of Jesus was. It was returning, God good for evil. But her very posture in the way that she initially, because when she rode up, and I think the story tells us this, and again, maybe this is me adding to the story or at least embellishing. David had to be thinking, oh, who's coming? Because they had multiple donkeys. Sorry, I got hay fever. And he was probably getting ready and was probably grabbing his sword.
Oh, yeah.
She gets off and bows and basically was saying, don't avenge yourself.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Anyway, I'll wrap the rest of the story. But do I have that semi-accurate?
Oh, you have it 100% accurate. No, I'm sitting here nodding. For those who are listening, not watching, you're 100% accurate.
She treated him, put it this way, she treated him as the man she hoped he would be.
That's it.
And that, I think, is the most powerful
Yes.
part of that story.
Yeah.
Not knowing, and knowing rumors of him. And she even told a story. She knew his history.
Yeah.
Because she brought up, and when she was talking about, don't just be pulling a sling out.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
went, probably flashback to,
Oh, yeah.
She
Yeah.
knows my deal.
Yeah.
She knows I don't mess around. But yet she called that out of him.
Yeah.
And then I love the line that she treated him within a posture.
Yeah.
And as we talk about how you can control people through your
Yeah.
posture, and I don't mean control in a bad way. I
it's
mean
in a good way.
Influence, I
Yes.
should say. But she did that with him, and it worked.
Yep.
And it works. Tends to work on guys anyway. So, ladies, if you're listening, this stuff works on us really easily. Just challenge us, and at times, if you want a chore done, treat us in a way, almost treat us in a way to set up a challenge or something, and then we'll fall right into that. We always
That's like
do.
when your wife comes and said, I just want you to know, there's not a man on the planet that does the dishes as beautiful, as amazing. Like, I'm so turned on when you do it.
And I'll bet you $20 you can't do that in 10 minutes. Oh, you roll my sleeves up. I'll
show you.
I know. But I think not only speaking to somebody in the way that you would hope that they would be, but when you speak to someone's potential,
Yes. Yeah.
I think, but for her to do that,
Yeah.
and for somebody to do that for somebody else, and I mentioned this a minute ago as far as parking pride, and I think I was more talking about the fight between the two NFL fans, but how do you, to go back to her, and obviously she was knowledgeable, the Bible says she was very smart, very beautiful, to park all of that, knowing you have a husband who maybe isn't the greatest guy in the world, but could destroy these guys.
Yeah.
How do you find that sense of being able to park the pride and laying that down in front of somebody else to get the proper response that you want? And she got it.
Yeah.
And I think we all can,
Yeah.
given that attitude and given that posture.
Well, I think that's the whole point. She, you told the story great, by the way. I love it. I can sit here and listen
Very
to you tell
sloppy,
stories all
but-
day long. But it is. I mean, it's like, and why that story is so good is I find myself in that story because I'm David. And, when anybody kind of flexes on your ego and you want to flex back. And so here's David and not treated with the respect. And I think this is a big deal for men. They always say men want respect, women want love. I think it's a little cliche, but it's true. It is true. And it's true for women, some women too. But he was feeling the disrespect, right? David was not feeling the respect he felt owed. And so what did he do? His first instinct was to react. And he took the posture of violence. He took the posture of power.
And he was probably justified. in it.
Yeah. And he was like, boys, let's go. Grab your swords. We're going to pack some heat. Let's go down. We're going to take
Yep.
care of it. We're going to show this guy what he needs to know. He's got to learn a lesson. And there they are. I mean, I see the picture of them in that ravine, putting on the swords, gearing up, lacing up, getting ready to go
And
at it.
with that, your emotion and your
Yes.
blood starts to
Oh,
rise.
yeah. And the justifications.
Sure.
You got to keep justifying why we're going to do this. And this is all him stuff. And then she comes riding in. She was the thermostat, though. That's the thing. She started the posture. When you were telling the story, and we haven't finished how it ends, but posture affects posture.
Yeah.
And her
Yes.
posture
Totally.
was one of de-escalating, but she did it in such a crafty way. And I like what you said earlier. One of the things is she called out the best in him.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't come across demeaning because I think he would have probably doubled down and said, I'll prove this to you. And she didn't appeal to that. She called out the best in him, that he could rise to that. So her posture did that. And then, of course, as the story goes, they go back into, where he was.
Well,
And
it all happened. It all worked. I mean, she made her peace. That she gave all the gifts. She goes back home, and Nabal's having a rager.
oh
at
yeah,
his
yeah.
place.
He's just
like a band, four kegger, and he's plowed.
He's
the Bible
plastered.
says he is.
yeah, he's
And
plastic.
so she says, Abigail figures, and the Bible says it. I'm going to wait till daybreak to tell him this.
Yeah.
Because he's going to lose his mind when
Oh,
he
yeah.
finds out I took this guy that he was seeing as an enemy. a whole bunch of grain and a whole bunch of food and gifts, and which he would have no doubt seen as weakness.
Yep.
And that's the pride thing we talk about. So the rest of the story kind of is 10 days later, the Lord strikes Nabal dead. David hops on a donkey, and he ends up marrying Abigail. That's crazy.
The moral of the story is
Right.
But it's so great because I think, when David and his guys go down there, they changed their posture. They went down there, they were going to kill him. That was the whole point, and shed a lot of blood. And then because of Abigail, they went down there and things were fine. And what I like about that though is, and I know some people struggle with this, but there is verses to back this up. The Lord says, vengeance is mine. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens so often in our posture, we feel, I've been wrong, man. I got to get back. I got to defend my honor and all this kind of, stuff. And David had a different posture, and just let God deal with that, and you see this in the Old Testament, especially like where people were just spitting more often than normal. And the dude, that was it for him.
And Old Testament was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
It totally was. And there was a justice in that maybe we don't understand today, but there was a justice in that. And if we unpack the story more, we would have seen where that injustice was on Nabal's part, and how God was like, I'll take care of that. You worry about your posture. Leave that up to me. That's a big moral of the story. Part of our posture is when you feel wronged, you feel like I got to defend something, go into it and realize my posture can change the atmosphere, and let God deal with that stuff, and just trust him with that. And it doesn't always mean it's going to work out where you get the intelligent, beautiful wife in the end. He got the bounty of that, right? He got her for that. And it doesn't always play out that way. But
it doesn't say if he got Nabal's boat and all of his guns and all this cool stuff. But
right.
I would imagine he did.
He probably got everything. I'm guessing. But I like this. So, as we wrap up, is I think of us as, let me just talk to men for a second. What's your posture in your house?
Yep.
And, as a dad, do you carry an air about you? What's the climate temperature of the room that when you walk in, so your wife comes home, she's having a hard day or whatever it is, like, do you enter into that space and add to that? Or maybe she's having a great day and you're the downer because of just the air about you, how you carry that, the posture of that. Do you listen? Do you overtalk? Do you the look on your face, the things you don't even say, but just how you live and how you sit around the house and how you pout. And a lot of guys do that, and the self-pity thing, and all those things are setting the temperature of your posture. And women, you can apply that in the same way as well if you're listening. But I think we have an incredible opportunity as dads and husbands, because I'd like to start with that and then take that to start at home, take that back to your workplace. Do people want to work for you? Do they want to work with you because of the posture? And I think one of the greatest assets you will ever be to any leadership team. So think of a place of employment and you're thinking, man, I hope I get job security. Watch your posture. Because I'll tell you what, anytime somebody comes on the chopping block where jobs have to go, it won't always be the most talented people that get to stay. Sometimes the most talented people get the can because they're just toxic because of their posture. So I think for me, I'm listening to this story going, what's my posture? Mm-hmm. And how am I carrying myself, and how am I setting the atmosphere and the temperature of every room I walk into?
Gosh, that's good. And I hear you say that, and I think, and I was just bragging about my curse of my overabundance of self-awareness, but I tend to come in and want to fix everything at home. And especially if
I do too,
my wife has had a rough day or a rough time, and then sometimes I get confused. Well, this isn't, I can't try this and she just says, would you just put your arms around me for 2 seconds and shut up?
Yep.
And she doesn't say that, but that's the message, and I don't always receive it. But when you think about that in terms of, and it isn't, these days it's different, and I don't mean to sound sexist, but dad gets home has always been the traditional, or you walk in and she's there, and that isn't always the case anymore. But how much you could set a tone for the rest of that night or the rest of that weekend or the rest of that week just by approaching that with a different posture than you normally do.
That's good. And it just made me think of this too, when you're talking with somebody and you're not saying anything, are you leaning in or are you leaning out with your arms folded, That posture says something.
Or on your phone.
On my phone. That's the one right there. And I have to work on that, where am I present? Or, oh, I'm here. No, you're not. Your posture is that you're holding a phone and you're going through texts and emails and whatever. All of those things add up.
I did that yesterday. I mean, we do always do this. We start thinking about things, but I hadn't seen my son all day. He gets home from high school. I go upstairs. He's in his room. I open the door and I start to ask him a question. My phone rings. And of course, my phone always is ringing. And it's somebody I needed to take the call from. I've been playing phone tag for 2 days. So I said, hang on a second. And I walk out, take the call. Call goes 10 minutes. By the time I come back, he's off he works at Starbucks and he usually works after school. So I get back to his room and he's gone. So I called him. I said, I am so sorry. I said, that was crap. I said, I shouldn't have taken, I don't, when your kids get in high school and they're driving, you don't see them enough anyway.
Yeah, right.
And here's a time when literally I open the door with great posture in mind and a story to tell, but then here comes the phone. And instead of spending a few minutes with my son, I walk off and take the phone call. And he was like, oh, it's no big deal, Dad. He goes, I know it was a call you had to take. But then I'm like, so he lets me off the hook, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And that again.
We all do that.
I know. But that makes me think of that when we brought up the phone. So frustrating. And one last thing I'll say, there's a lot of times people who maybe don't know the word, and it's okay if you don't. And we always try to have something. And I think every story we tell or situation we tell relates to if you're a believer or non-believer. There's always something to be profited from in all of this. But the one thing I think the Bible tends to get a bad rap at times for people who don't know it, for being this kind of male dominant, chauvinistic. But how many women like Abigail were there in the Bible who absolutely stole the show?
Yeah.
And I mean, people have talked about that with Jesus being really the first one who in that time honored and lifted up and presented and how he included, even the story of rolling the stone. Back then you wouldn't have told that story using women during that time if you wanted credibility attached to the truthfulness or impact of a story, but they did.
Right.
And so Abigail, I think, and it just kind of hit me a minute ago, I think is another example of an amazing woman in the Bible who really, she de-escalated a situation that would have been a lot of probably bloodshed. And who knows what it would have happened.
Right. She saved the whole thing. A war could have broke out. A civil war. It could have got, whatever. Certainly there was going to be lives lost. We know that because they were not going to put their swords down. And I think, so that's the point. How can we learn from this, apply that to our lives? And I think that there's going to be a blessing on the other side.
Me too. Well, I know I don't often spin into a deep Bible story with much accuracy. I think the gist I always get.
That's great.
But I wouldn't be preaching that in front of church.
I think you're ready to go. I think I've always said this. You always bring a great sermon.
No, but there's a bunch of stories, and I'm not the guy that can sit and quote everything. I'm just not that good at it. And I haven't spent the time in it, admittedly, through the years. I haven't had it in my past. I have for the last 25 years or so, but not going way back to where I can just recall it out. But there are stories like that have always hit me, and that I think most everything in there directly relates to today. And that, I think, was a good one. Yeah. Somehow, some reason, it popped in my mind when I saw these two guys beating each other up in a men's room at an NFL game.
Yep, exactly.
Don't know how I got there, but that's where we ended up. So thank you, as always, for listening and for watching Vertical Pursuit. Again, you can check us out on the website, verticalpursuit.org, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then there's the Vertical Pursuit app, and then we're also on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. I know I forgot that one. So if you always listen, it is a video cast. What'd you call it? Vidcast. As the kids say these days. Colton Myers pushing buttons in the back. Thanks also to Nick Livingston and David Ward, and thanks to Mike Tatlock. I'm Mike Barrett. We'll see you next time on VP. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.